captured by Irish pirates and spent 6 years as a slave. He escaped and got back home. After many years, and after he had become a clergyman, he felt the call to go back to the place that had made him a slave. Who is this? St. Patrick. We just celebrated St. Patrick's Day. How many Irish, Taiwanese Americans do we have? Were you on that day? The more and more I learn about St. Patrick, the more amazed I am by him. His legacy is massive. He evangelized Ireland through a dynamic multiplication of ministry that went even beyond Ireland's shores. A lot of people didn't think you could evangelize a people unless they were civilized first. And yet because he had experienced life among them, knew their language, knew their customs, and as God called him back to Ireland, he was able to do things that no one could imagine a missionary doing. What made him so effective? Well, he went out and he lived among the people. He multiplied leadership. He respected the local customs. He knew their language. And he had a story to tell. He was the former slave of an Irish chieftain. But one of the things that people love pointing out is that the Irish love paradox. Paradox. Something that seems to be contradictory but may have a deeper truth to it. And why did this make the Irish more open to the gospel? It's because the Bible, if you've ever read the Bible, is full of apparent paradox. We could summarize the life of Jesus as one paradox after the other. God, who is spirit, becomes incarnate in the flesh. What we celebrate at Christmas, the preaching and exercise of God's kingdom through Jesus, a homeless man. It's weird. John's gospel goes through pains to make sure the reader knows that Jesus is going to his glorification, and the glorification is a cross. How can glory come through one of the most shameful deaths? And today we celebrate Jesus' triumphal entry, Palm Sunday, in which a homeless man yet again is riding in as the king into Jerusalem, bringing peace, and yet will violently die a gruesome death. This is the paradox we look at today. Let us pray. Father, help us see your truth through Jesus Christ, who is the truth. Amen.
Amen.
Today is Palm Sunday. This is the beginning of the Holy Week, the week before Easter. And in it we remember this, Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. He had spoken to his disciples before saying, I have to get there. I have to get to Jerusalem. Why? Because there I will die. Now, even his disciples knew this was very, very dangerous. One of them, Thomas, said, let us go with him so we might die with him. But on Palm Sunday, all of this seems to fade away, and it's this glorious, wonderful parade that they get to take a part of. Now, I don't know, I'm more introverted. I don't really tend to like parades or to be out and among the people. But my first year at the University of Illinois was interesting. We got season tickets in the student section, very cheap to be able to go there. And, University of Illinois football is not very good. People were wearing shirts because the previous season we went 0-11. That's bad for those that aren't into sports. 0 wins, 11 losses. And so their shirt would say, beer. 0-11, it's not about football anymore. And so we were there and we're like, okay, our team's going to be pretty bad. And we lost the first game, we lost the second game. And then the third and fourth game, we played this no-name, team. And we won. And it was crazy. I mean, we were still like 1-2 or 1-3. It was not a good season to start off. But we went crazy like we just won the Super Bowl. And we start streaming onto this artificial turf, and I just got caught up. It's just so exciting when you have something like that. And my roommate and I are down there, we're like, okay, and we're like, Everyone's excited. People start to try to pull down the goalposts. Have you ever seen that in football? But let me tell you, in an artificial turf stadium, it doesn't work. When you have enough weight on a goalpost and when it's just buried in the ground, you can pull it up. But when it's in cement, it doesn't work. So it just kept bouncing up and down. There was no way all of our weight could actually do it. Maybe it could have snapped it at one point, but it didn't. And one person was shimmying up the goalpost like really, really high. It was kind of freaky, but we're kind of like, okay, what do we do now? But the point is, when things get exciting, things get exciting. You get to do things that you would never, ever do when you're a part of a mob like that. People do stupid, crazy things when they're part of a crowd like that. And so people see Jesus coming in, the disciples are excited. Hey, it's maybe it won't lead to his death. We're going into the holy city, and we've got a good group here. We're going to start singing. Jesus is the King. We know that now. This is going to be it. It's going to be a huge part. They're cutting down palm trees. They're taking off their cloaks, and they're putting it on the ground in front of Jesus. And Jesus rides in triumphantly. And even Jesus, knowing that he is going to die, can't hold them back and says, just stop it. If they try to stop singing my praises, that these very stones, these rocks on the ground, they will cry out for me. Now why? Why does Jesus go through this whole thing of getting a colt and wanting to ride on this colt? It's a little tricky. Because Zechariah 9:9 talks about, here comes your king, lowly and riding on a donkey. So what is Jesus doing here? Is he just kind of nitpicking and knowing, oh, here's a messianic prophecy here, so I'm just going to set it up to make it look like I'm Messiah? Actually, in some ways, I think Jesus is. I think Jesus knows of this prophecy, but he knows that it speaks deeper, and not just saying, I'm king, but I am a lowly king. Here comes your king, get ready, but he's riding on a donkey. Now, I don't know, what kind of cars, we're in DC, what kind of cars are involved in like motorcades? Like when President Obama comes back into town. Escalades, right? I don't know the price of an Escalade, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty expensive and has bulletproof upgrades and all sorts of different stuff, I'm sure, going on there. Jesus, the equivalent for Jesus would be some beat up 1970 Volkswagen Bug or something. You know, he's arriving in the holy city, but not in an Escalade. Now, what's really interesting, what I found out was Jesus is coming from the Mount of Olives from the east into Jerusalem. That same time, around that same time, Pilate is coming into the city from the west in the Escalade, in the equivalent of the Escalade. With all of this power and pomp and circumstance, here comes Pilate with the purple robe around him, making sure I need to keep things chill. I need to make sure that things don't get out of hand. It's a religious, festival that's going on, the Passover. It's talking about people coming out of bondage, and we, the Romans, are in power. I got to make sure things are chill here. So he's coming with all of this from the west, whereas in the east, here comes Jesus in his little Volkswagen beat-up Bug. His own proof. Jesus here is finally publicly accepting, yeah, I'm king. You can't get him to stop. We've been reading through Mark, and Mark is a very interesting gospel because it starts out with this messianic secret. Jesus doesn't want anyone to know he's the Messiah in the beginning. This is a kind of a theme in Mark. Just keep down, demons, stop shouting that I'm king. Don't do that. Oh, you're healed. Now just go and do your normal thing with the priest. Don't tell anybody about this. But at this point in the ministry, Jesus is finally taking it all off. I'm done with parables. I'm done with telling you who I am. Through metaphors, here I am, I'm king, I'm accepting it. But if you know the story, Jesus gets steamrolled by the powers that be. The peace that the crowd sang about is short-lived. The powers that be take over this story in violence. They have the money, they have the power, they have the coin to bribe even one of his own disciples to betray him. That's power. They have the power to manipulate a court to make an innocent man guilty of something. To kill an innocent man so that they can keep their jobs and keep Rome happy because they're quelling some sort of pseudo-rebellion. The powers that be try to attain peace through a brutally violent death of an innocent man. Jesus stands no chance, and peace is gone. Jesus here embodies the future, embodies what he wants to see. He wants to see peace. And he embodies it to such an extent that he will die on the cross. He demonstrates on Palm Sunday his own embodiment of peace as both the means and the ends. I'm not going to kid myself to think that I can use violence to create peace. I will come peacefully to make peace. The integrity of his method seems like madness to us. He says, see your king, Zechariah's prophecy, see your king comes to you gentle. What king comes to you gentle? He seeks peace and so comes peacefully. And what other way would there be? I don't know what you're working on in your life, what struggles you have right now. But are you embodying what you want to see? Are you using violence to make peace? Manipulation to try to somehow earn trust? Cheating in order to bring truth? Using hate to stir up love? This is the challenge I have as a father of saying, how do I allow my kids to not scream without screaming at them? How to tell my kids not to hit without spanking them, right? How do you do that? How do we create what we want to see without using the opposite means of what we want to see? These ways we think are shortcuts to the ends we want to see never work, never will. We have to embody what we want to see, even if it costs us our lives. A friend a while ago recommended me to read Wendell Berry. Has anyone read Wendell Berry? Okay. Wendell Berry is a very, very interesting man. He left academia to go back into the Midwest to just learn to live again sort of off the farm and understand how linked our lives are with culture, with cultivating the land and everything. I'm making a bad job of summarizing him, but he's a very interesting guy. And right after 9/11, he had a big essay called The Failure of War. And he opens with this. If you know even as little history as I know, it is hard not to doubt the efficacy of modern war as a solution to any problem except that of retribution. That's a little complicated sentence. Let me read it again. If you know even as little history as I know, it is hard not to doubt the efficacy of modern war as the solution to any problem except that of retribution. The justice of exchanging one damage for another, which results only in doubling and continuing the damage and the suffering. Now, I'm sure we could have some very good lunch discussions about the truth of this or not, but I think basically he's right. I have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, and if these two were nation states, let me tell you that when one hits the other hitting back never solves the problem. It never ends there, right? When one punches and then the other punches back, there's no parity in there. There's no fairness. They don't say, oh, shake hands now we're even, now we can go in peace. It never happens. It just keeps escalating. I didn't hit you that hard, right? Isn't that what all of us siblings said in growing up? Can retribution ever be just? It just goes on and on. If your bomb destroys my people, can I get kill the equivalent amount of people that you killed, the same amount of women and children? Can we shake hands after we do that? What way forward do we have in this world but the way of Jesus, that Jesus exemplified? Now, Luke's version of the triumphal entry ends with Jesus' prophecy and lament over Jerusalem. And Jesus taps into this idea. He says, all of this celebration and praise, and then once he turns the corner and he sees Jerusalem, he starts bawling his eyes out. Because he says, here I come. This is the way for peace, and you don't get it. You don't understand it. You're missing it. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to keep going the way you've gone. You're going to keep going hating the Romans' guts the way you've always done it. And one day they're going to build a big siege equipment and just wipe you out. And in AD 70, that happens. The temple's destroyed. There's a rebellion, a Jewish rebellion against Rome. Rome comes back, destroys the temple. They tried again in AD 135, and they mow that place to the ground. Jesus is saying here, may I be your Messiah. May I be your Christ. May I be your King. My way is the only way. But you're going to keep going this way, Jerusalem, and it's not going to end well with you. Jesus' faith and peace in her ways is glorious. And that very glory is in his lowliness. And in that lowliness, we can miss him in our own lives just as Jerusalem did. We can just keep going on through life following different sorts of kings. Kings that know how to show off a little, that have a little shimmer, that show power in a more concrete way. Kings that promise to make America great again. Kings that promise to grind our enemies into dust. But Jesus shows us the paradox of true greatness. On Friday I went to D.C. and I went to a few of the museums trying to get a little bit of inspiration for my sermon. And I went through the American Art Museum. And there's this huge statue of General George Washington resigning his commission. It's very, very famous. What had happened is, during the Revolutionary War, we gave George Washington a ton of power. Like tyrannical power. Like he could do whatever he wanted. There was no checks or balances. He could just go for it. So everyone was expecting, even some of his other generals and stuff were saying, this is for years for the taking. You've kicked out the King of England, so why don't you just become king? And in that symbol, in him going to Annapolis and saying, I've done my duty, the way of peace is here, it's going forward, I resign my commission, is just one of the most powerful things that one could do. There's an anecdote, you don't know if it's true, but one day King George III asked the court painter West whether Washington would be head of the army or head of state when the war ended. When his court painter West replied that Washington's sole ambition was to return to his estate, return to his farm, the thunderstruck king declared, if he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world. The greatest man in the world, rejecting power and glory and just saying, I've done what I need to do. I can return in peace. And George Washington still used violence to secure peace. If George Washington is the greatest man ever, then what is Jesus, who staked his own life by saying, I will come in peace for peace? In Dante's The Divine Comedy, Volume 2, it's about purgatory. You don't have to necessarily believe in purgatory. Just listen to what the poet describes. He sees a mural depicting, do you remember the story of King David dancing before the ark? And he's dancing with maybe not much on, not much clothes on. So here's what he writes about this mural that he's seen. Ahead and far beyond the sacred ark, his robes girt up, the humble psalmist danced, showing himself both more and less than king. I like that phrase, showing himself both more, greater than any king, because in his humility he's able to not just say, I'm restricted by my kingship, but then also that humility of less than king, as some people might see. Palm Sunday is about Jesus showing himself both more and less than king. King of kings, greater than any king of all of history, but humble enough that we can miss him. Don't miss the king. Don't miss Jesus in his humility as he comes to you gently, unexpectedly. Trust him and in his ways. Lay your life down before him, that the only true peace that he provides would fill our hearts. Let's pray.